Hey guys, it's Peter, and I'm back. Of course I'm back. I'm not going anywhere. Boost! Peekaboo, I see you because... Ow! Damn it! Oh my god, my thumb got right in there. Oh, damn it. I'm huge. That hurts so bad. Okay, let's just get to the song. Just got paid Friday night. Money in my pocket. How are you guys doing today? Oh my god, that hurts so bad. Well, F it. We're not going to edit it out. We're not going to edit it out. We're going to get right into the drama today, okay? The hot drama that everybody is talking about. Everybody is... Oh god, that hurts so bad. That hurts so bad. This is where most influencers, most content creators would edit that part of the video out, not me. Let's just keep it rolling. Let's just keep it rolling. I'm not even, listen, Linda, okay? Today, we're just gonna sit in front of the computer and we're just gonna have a little conversation for you. I just poured some coffee. Hi, how are you? And, hi, how are you? Okay, so we're gonna talk about the hottest drama on YouTube right now, which is the fact that Trisha Paytas has apparently confirmed that she is not posting the Jeffree Star interview from the she should have called it Just Trish. That would have been so good instead of Just Trish. She should have called it Just Trish. Just, J-U-S-H. Kush Trish, Just Trish. She should have called it Just Trish. That would have been so good. Anyway, we're going to talk about how she has apparently come out and confirmed that she is not posting the Jeffree Star interview from the Just Trish podcast, and that why supposedly she's not going to post it. And also Jeffree Star has come out and retaliated that story and said there's another reason why she's actually not posting it. So we're gonna get both sides of that story today. I've done deep investigation. And by deep investigation, I mean that I watched Adam McIntyre's video about it and I watched Rich Lux's video about it. This feels very much like an OG drama video. In fact, I was going to bring out the ring light today and sit in the chair over there because people are like, can you go sit in the chair and bring out... You know, listen, Linda, it's a lot of work, okay, to move. That's not my ring light. That's my husband's ring light for when he works from home and he does little Zoom calls over there. You see he's got his little table set up with his computer and stuff. My ring light is actually right over here. This ring light, hold on a second. Woo! Ah! This is the old school ring light, okay? We haven't pulled her out. We'll just put her over here since people missed this ring light. She ain't been out in years, okay? Because I film in the bedroom now. So anyway... That's the this is like old school, okay? Just sitting down here, watch 2 drama videos, and then I'm gonna respond to what I think about all of it. Because I do have lots of thoughts about this, okay? But first we must do a get ready with me, okay? So let me show you all of the chapsticks and the lip balms that I have that are always sitting next to my computer. I have all of these, okay? So these are mostly Treat Beauty, and then I have like a Chanel lip gloss, and then I have a lip smacker or lip gloss here. And then I also have the Twizzlers by Morphe number 9. No, not by Morphe. And then I have this new thing of chapsticks, but I think I'm gonna review that. And then I have, well, these are new. They're like old new. And then I have the Candy Shop flavored lip balms, chapsticks. Fun Dip. Oh my lord, Fun Dip. I used to love that so much back in the day. And the Laffy Taffy Gobstopper. We'll review this over my review channel, so we'll save those. I don't feel like using the Twizzlers today, so what should I go in with? Well, now the one is like a powdered donut, so we won't go in with that one. Which one should I go in with today? What is this? Oh, this is Bomb Pop. Balm Pop is what it's called. We'll go in with Bomb Pop. Not my favorite, but we'll go in with that today. I have lots to say about this today. I'm so excited. And then we're gonna go in with a little bit of the Chanel lip gloss. The lip smackers, it really smacks my lip, so we're not gonna go with that. Okay, and then we're gonna let it bake for a second. So I've made a couple videos about this now, about the fact that Trisha Paytas, are y'all reading the Christmas books? Oh my God, I'm so into them. the Christmas Advent Calendar books. Are y'all reading those? I'm loving them so much. I talked about them over here the other day. One of them is called 25 Days. It's by Per Jacobson. And the other one is called Xmas Break. And you read a chapter a day until Christmas. It's like Christmas Advent Calendar. I'm loving it so much. I'm adjusting the lighting on my ring light. That means I'm turning my computer light up and down. See, look. Oh my Lord, it's like a ring light right here. Okay. Anyway, are y'all reading the Christmas books? I'm having so much fun. I wait till midnight and then I read the next day. It's so fun. Okay, so this is like hot topic apparently right now about this this canceled, well, not Tana Mojo's canceled podcast. That was a mess, wasn't it? That canceled podcast with Jeffree Star. So Trisha Paytas filmed this episode of the why can't I say it? The Just Trish podcast with Jeffree Star. Okay, now we know that it happened because before the episode happened, Trish fed out in other episodes of the Just Trish podcast that she was doing the interview with Jeffree Star. So we knew that it was coming, okay? Then on the day that they filmed it, Jeffree Star actually put up on TikTok and Instagram stories. He posted pictures of himself like going to Trisha's house. And he even posted pictures with Trisha Paytas, okay? The day that they filmed it. So we know that the interview happened. We know that it was recorded, all right? Now, I was told by a source that it was going to come out. Actually, you know what? Let me pull up my calendar right here so we can, on my computer. This is so resourceful that I'm sitting here in front of the... So today is December the 6th. Hi, how are you? Okay, so Jeffree Star's makeup came out on the 29th, okay? His 10th anniversary release of that makeup that he can't sell anything of because nobody wants it anymore, okay? It's just basically a collection of reds and blues and greens and whatever colors he's put out for the last 10 years that nobody wants. Okay, so, I mean, if you have any of his other palettes, you have the 10th anniversary palette, and since nobody's using those other 10 palettes, they don't want this one because it's not selling out. Okay, so... which is why he's apparently starting an OnlyFans. That was my video yesterday. It's about Jeffree Star starting an OnlyFans. So if you didn't watch my video from yesterday, go watch that. He's starting an OnlyFans. Oh my God. Oh my God. Jeffree Star is going to teach the world how to suck dick. Okay. So my speculation was that if Trisha was going to post the interview, that she had made some kind of deal with Jeffree Star, that he would like sit down and do the interview with her, but she would have to release it. I thought she would release it like that Monday, Tuesday, or Wednesday, okay, before Thanksgiving, because his release was coming out the 29th. And that they would talk about Dramageddon, and they would talk about their differences, and they would talk about the Vegas trip and everything that they had that were issues with them. But then at the end of it, they would have like this, you know, like peaceful moment where they made up to each other and all this kind of stuff. That's what I thought the interview would be like. It'd be just a bunch of phony bullshit is what I thought it would be. And then at the end, it would be a lot about Jeffree Star talking about, yes, girl, I'm releasing the 10th anniversary. It's going to sell out in 30 seconds and blah, 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 whatever. That at first, I did not believe that this podcast tour that he's doing went on Tana Mojo's podcast, canceled with Brooke Schofield. He went on, he was going on Trisha's podcast. I did not necessarily believe that it was like as a marketing tour for his palette. But so many people said that they thought that that's what it was in my comment section that I'm like, okay, if a lot of people believe this, there's got to be some truth to it. So if that were the case, then the podcast would have come out that week because it would have been like the advertisement. Trish gets a lot of views on her podcast. It would have been the advertisement to then release it on that Friday, if that makes sense, okay? But I was told that week, because I made a video about it, and I was told by a source that the video was actually confirmed to come out the week before, all right? That the video was actually going to come out before Friday the 22nd. That the 21st or the 22nd that Trisha was going to post the video. I was told that it was confirmed that that's when it was going to come out. It didn't come out, so I don't know where that source got their information, but I was told that by a source that's close to some of these people that it was going to come out the 21st or the 22nd, okay? It did not come out. It was around that time that people were starting to speculate whether or not Trisha Paytas was going to post this podcast or not, okay? Well, one of the things that happened was that when a lot of the Trisha fans started hearing that Jeffree Star was going to be on the Just Trish podcast, they started posting clips, okay, of things that Jeffree Star had said about Trisha in the past. Not just in the last month, but like in the last couple years. They started posting clips about it on, I think on YouTube and on TikTok and on Instagram. They were tagging Trisha in it, so Trisha would see it. They were tagging these clips that maybe Trisha hadn't seen before, maybe she wasn't aware of it, okay? So they were tagging this. Well, then the next thing that happened was there was no mention about whether or not Trisha was going to take down the podcast. She didn't say anything about it. Jeffree didn't say anything about it. Nobody said anything about the podcast not being posted. At that point, people still thought the podcast was being posted. But what people realized was that Trisha was deleting videos, okay, off of her channel, allegedly, that she had, like, talked a lot extensively about Jeffree Star in there, or that they were favorable videos with her and Jeffree Star, okay? Now, just recently, she came out in a podcast, and she talked about Shane Dawson, and she poked a lot of fun at Shane Dawson, and that will be a video that because I've got some notes on that, somebody brought it to my attention. Thank you, Kitty, for that. So I will be doing that video in the next couple days. But that was all around the same time, okay? I'm not necessarily sure that, and I've said this in a lot of videos, that for me, like, so many people were saying, oh, this Jeffree Star Trisha Paytas podcast is like an iconic moment. I'm not necessarily sure that I would define Jeffree Star being on the Just Trish podcast as an iconic moment, okay? As somebody that has watched Trisha Paytas for over 8.5 years and covered Trisha Paytas extensively and covered Shane Dawson extensively and covered Jeffree Star extensively and things like that, an iconic moment for Trisha Paytas to me would have been her and Shane Dawson sitting down on a podcast and them, like, working through their issues, if they have any issues anymore. I mean, Trisha Paytas and Shane Dawson were the closest. I mean, people used to call them, you know, they're together, you know, like Train, Trisha and Shane, and people loved their videos together and all that kind of stuff. And they had what appeared to be a real friendship. I believe it was a real friendship. And I believe to this day that Trisha is very, very hurt with the fact that when all this stuff went down with Hair by Jay saying horrible things to Trisha Paytas and Jeffree Star not standing up for her and things like that, that Shane went where the money was, okay? Because at that time, he had just come out with a collaboration with Jeffree Star, and Jeffree Star was also in control of his merch and things like that through Killer Merch. And so I believe that that Shane Dawson went where the cash cow was, and the cash cow was Jeffree Star. So he couldn't piss off Jeffree Star because Jeffree Star had so much control over the money that Shane was making at that point. And I also think that the relationship between he and Trisha was probably very volatile at times. That he probably, I mean, if he was willing to say things to me about Trisha that I wasn't even in that inner circle, I'm sure to other people that were closer to the situation, that he probably said things to Trisha as well. So I don't know. Maybe it was just a straw that broke the camel's back, and Shane was like, you know what, I'm just kind of done at this point. Like, I don't need this friendship in my life, right? Maybe he felt like she was toxic or whatever. But I do believe that that was a moment in time that really hurt Trisha's feelings, because I think at that moment she really believed that Shane was her friend, and Shane didn't come out. And she made videos about it, and she talked about how hurt she was about Shane and things like that. And she talked about how Shane said, can't we just kind of move on from this and forget it? And she's like, no, I can't. I think people kind of forget this. This is where Jeffree Star wants to get in podcasts and say how honest he is. And I proved in a couple videos past that he's trying to rewrite history, rewrite the narrative of what happened during Dramageddon and things like that. I watched those videos in real time, as many of you did. I remember Trisha Paytas sitting there and being like, talking about how hurt she was that Shane said, can't we just move on from this? Can't we just forget it? And she's like, no, I can't. You're aligning yourself with somebody that has said such horrible shit about me and continues to. Now, Trisha has come out and said that Jeffree Star apologized to her on more than one occasion, okay, about the Vegas trip and about what Hair by Jay said. That being said, and Hair by Jay has made, you know, I would say pathetic attempts at an apology to Trisha Paytas publicly, and she has also said privately. But the fact remains that Jeffree Star has continued to stand by Hair by Jay, and I don't think has really made great attempts to, you know, mend fences with Trisha Paytas until it serves his needs to go on this podcast, all right? Now, when I get into this whole conversation, I know that the way that I'm talking, people will be like, oh, Peter's taking Trisha's side, blah, 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 whatever. This is not a side-taking thing for me, okay? I'm a drama channel just looking at this as an observer, looking aside just as very much as you guys are. I know that Trisha Paytas has done a lot of horrible shit. I know that Jeffree Star has both done a lot of horrible shit too. Neither one of them, I think, is innocent and pure in the situations of the world, okay? I just want to make that very, very clear. I'm specifically talking about the situation that is going on with this podcast, okay? So they filmed this podcast, and allegedly, at first, it was going to go up, okay? I think that's the first thing that needs to be noted when we're talking about the history of this podcast, okay? Is that it was filmed, and then Jeffree Star said he showed that it had been filmed afterwards, okay? Trisha also talked afterwards about it being filmed. So at the time that it was filmed, all right, everybody believed that it was going to come out. Trisha believed it was going to come out. Jeffree believed it was going to come out. We all thought it was going to come out, okay? In fact, it was confirmed to somebody else, a source, that it was coming out, all right? So, multiple people, it was confirmed that it was coming out. So, that fact, the podcast was already done, the interview was done, and it was coming out, okay? So, that would make you think that what occurred in the podcast didn't necessarily, I'm just thinking about this as a logical person, okay? A person that has common sense, all right? It doesn't take a lot of common sense to kind of think through some of this stuff. So that would indicate that whatever happened in the podcast, okay, is not the reason why the podcast isn't being posted, all right? It would indicate, because if Trisha said the podcast was coming out, Jeffree said the podcast was coming out, other people said the podcast was coming out, Jeffree posted pictures of Trisha. I mean, if all of that stuff was said that the podcast was coming out, then that would indicate that nothing that was that happened during the podcast could be the reason for why the podcast wasn't coming out, okay? After the podcast was filmed was when people started tagging Trisha and all of this horrific shit that Jeffree Star had said about her out of protection for Trisha. And a lot of her fans were very, very upset that she had given a platform to Jeffree Star. Now, like I said, I'm not excusing anything that Trisha Paytas has done in the past, okay? I think that Trisha Paytas has done a lot of horrific shit that she has never taken responsibility for, all right? That being said, Jeffree Star had just gone on the canceled podcast with Tana Mongeau and Brooke Schofield, all right? It did not favor him well to go on that podcast, all right? People were very, very upset with Tana and Brooke for having him on that podcast. It's interesting because depending on where you look and where the bias is how the reception of that podcast goes, all right? I went and I looked underneath the comment sections in that podcast. It's not favoring Jeffree Star. People think that Tana and Brooke are idiots for having Jeffree Star on that podcast. They think that they're absolute fools and they should never have platformed him, okay? I've also covered parts of that podcast in my previous videos and talked about it because I watched parts of that podcast. When you watch a podcast, Jeffree Star, they ask him about Dramageddon, they ask him about him and Shane's involvement, and Jeffree Star, who has now come out and said that he tells the truth on these situations, lies straight through his teeth. Anybody, any drama channel, okay, that was there at that time, that was covering Dramageddon, any person that watched Dramageddon go down would know, per that interview, that Jeffree Star was attempting to rewrite history, okay? That Jeffree Star was posting things on Twitter like, James Charles couldn't even come over to my house because my boyfriend doesn't want him over there, things like that. That he completely 100% endorsed Toddy Westbrook after her video came out and he tweeted about endorsing her, that Shane Dawson endorsed her. They were very much in the thick of the drama that was going on with, is this going out of focus? I feel like this is going out of focus. Hold on a second, this is what I have to do sometimes. Okay. That they were very much in the thick of what was going on with the drama, okay? We know that. We know that. Anybody that was there at that time that lived it, no matter what they want to say today, knows that Jeffree Star and Shane Dawson were in the middle of what was going on with Dramageddon, okay? It was Jeffree Star, Shane Dawson, Toddy Westbrook, and James Charles. So when Tana Mongeau on the interview asks him, like, his involvement with Dramageddon, he's like, we didn't even really know that it was going on. It's 100% bullshit, okay? He knows that Toddy Westbrook is not going to come out and speak about it. So he knows he can say that stuff. He says that Toddy Westbrook is horrible in the interview. He says she's a horrible person. He knows he can say that because he knows Toddy Westbrook's not going to get in a video and air his dirty laundry. He knows that. If she were going to do it, she would have done it by now, and she's not going to. He knows James Charles isn't going to come out and counter his actions, so he knows that he can say anything he wants to say about James Charles and Toddy Westbrook. He knows Shane Dawson ain't going to say anything because for Shane Dawson to come out, it's just going to make Shane Dawson look worse, and Shane Dawson is so afraid of drama confrontation that he wants to just move past this whole situation, okay? So Jeffree Star knows he can say whatever he wants to say and nobody's going to question him about it. Except for drama channels, we should be, because we lived it at that time. And when I watched that interview, I watched it like this. Like, is he for real? Like, he is literally rewriting history because nothing that he is saying is true. For anybody that watched it in real time, that watched Tottie's video, that watched James' video, that watched Jeffree's tweets, that watched Jeffree and Shane together, I mean, people alleged at that time that all this was all concocted by Shane Dawson and Jeffree Star because they were actually not doing a documentary about a palette release that was a cash grab, which is what I said at the time, and I got absolutely decimated for it. And then later it came out that that's exactly what it was. I got so many comments at the time that people were like, this is Shane and Jeffree. Shane is a genius. Shane is coming up with a documentary about feeding drama out there and how the drama channels, this is when drama channels were huge, okay? And that drama channels are reacting to all of this. I mean, people really believed that. They really thought that drama was at the center of this documentary. Shane, at the very end, he cut that documentary short. I don't think people remember that because he did not want to get into it. When he put that trailer out for the documentary, he included part of Dramageddon in the trailer. Then at the end, said he didn't want to address it anymore, and that's when he put out his letter saying that he was exiting the circus. So for Jeffree Star to get in a podcast and say he and Shane weren't part of that drama, then what circus exactly was Shane Dawson, what part of that circus was he exiting? He was very much part of the beauty community at that time. Jeffree has also bragged that they put out one of the biggest palettes. The reason why people were jealous of them was because they put the biggest palette out and the biggest sale and all that kind of stuff, which I'm not saying that it wasn't for beauty influencer makeup. But if that's all true, it's like, how can one part be true, but the other part can't be true? And this is where Jeffree Star wants to rewrite history and then say it's the truth. That he's a truth teller and he's always telling the truth. No, he's not. And he knows that. But he knows the people that fawn over him will be like, oh my God, Jeffree Star is such a truth teller. The people that absolutely fan over Jeffree Star and love Jeffree Star are like, he is such a truth teller, okay? So he does the podcast. The podcast does not fare well for Jeffree Star at all. It definitely doesn't fare well for Tana Mojo and Brooke Schofield. People are like, y'all are idiots for having this man on your podcast. You should never have had him on your podcast, okay? People are laughing about him in the comment sections. I mean, the afterwards where he's on TikTok Live and they're on Patreon, it's a joke. People are literally coming for Tana and Brooke on their Patreon saying, why did you have him? Why did you have him? Why did you platform him? Why are you having him on there? Jeffree Star is on a TikTok Live. He looks so uncomfortable, okay? Because he knows that all these people are pissed. He knows he's irrelevant today. He knows nobody cares, all right? So Trisha had already fed out that Tana was having him on the Cancel podcast, and then she was going to post her podcast afterwards, all right? Trisha, after the podcast was interviewed, said that. So then Tana posts her podcast, and it's really, really ill-received, all right? People are like, oh God, this is really, really bad. Trisha's podcast is doing really well, all right? For her, that podcast, I mean, it's her bread and butter. It's really good. Her and Oscar work very, very well together on that podcast. It's a moment in time for Trisha Paytas. Whether you love her or hate her, that podcast is genius. It really is. It's perfect for her. I said years ago, I did not think that she needed like some celebrity or, you know, influencer co-host and things like that. Like, I loved Frenemies too, don't get me wrong. But I'm just saying, oh, I should have worn my Frenemies hoodie today. But I'm just saying, like, Oscar as being like, you know, like when Johnny Carson and Ed McMahon was the lesser of the two, like that's who Oscar is. But Oscar plays very, very well off of Trisha. They play very well off of each other, okay? It's genius for her, and she's getting a lot of views on it. So I think that one of the factors was that she thought Tana and Brooke received such negativity off of this podcast. I don't know that I want it to hurt me. I don't know that I really think that it would have hurt Trisha, okay? I think if she had posted this podcast, I don't think that it would have hurt her. But I think that she was afraid of that, all right? And then people are tagging her left and right. Oh, gotta turn down my volume. I'm getting text messages. Then probably more tea. People are sending me tea left and right. But I think that she thought that she was going to get a lot of negativity and backlash off of it. But I don't really think that it would have hurt her views. I think she would have got a shit ton of views if she had posted the podcast. I think a lot of people would have questioned her for having Jeffree on there. But I don't think overall it would have hurt her. She's had a lot of problematic people on her podcast, okay? And I think it would have been a lot of bullshit. And I think that's really what it was. So then people started tagging Trisha in all these clips of Jeffree Star saying horrific shit, okay? So as Jeffree Star, we already know that he is somebody that rewrites history. He ignores the truth. He acts like he's telling the truth, but like he only shows you, I've said this for years about Jeffree Star, he only shows you bits and pieces. Like when he came out against Laura and Manny, he talked about what horrible friends they were and what he did, but he never talked about his part in that. He never talked about his part in the disintegration of his friendship with Laura and Manny, of which there is a huge part. There is a huge part, okay, of where Jeffree Star played into the disintegration of his friendship with Laura and Manny and Gabriel Zamora and Toddy Westbrook. I mean, Jeffree Star is the common denominator of all of those people, okay? He is the one person that was friends with all of those people, and he's not friends with them anymore. And yes, I do think some of those people are not great people, okay? But Jeffree Star is the only one that's not friends with any of those people anymore. I mean, you got to kind of take a look at that and be like, maybe he's the common denominator. Maybe it's something about Jeffree Star, okay? So people have been speculating that then Trisha, they found out, was starting to delete content, okay, that she had spoken favorably about Jeffree Star, all right? I don't know how they found that she was doing this, but apparently she's been doing this, okay? A lot of different sources have said this. Trisha Crave on Twitter said this, or the Trish Crave. A lot of different sources have said that she is deleting content that speaks favorably about Jeffree Star, which means that she started getting tagged in this stuff, and she's like, oh, I mean, Trisha is this person. I used to talk to Trisha back in the day. It was kind of out of sight, out of mind for her. Like, if she didn't know that somebody was, like, if somebody didn't show it to her, she didn't really know that it was going on. But when somebody showed it to her, then Trisha would act, okay? Then she'd be like, oh, I didn't realize this person was talking shit about me. Now that it's been brought to my attention, I'm going to do something about that. That is not Trisha in the last year. That's Trisha in the last 10 years, okay? And definitely in the last 8.5 years that I've been covering her. The difference about it is that Trisha 8 years ago would have got on video and said, I'm canceling this podcast because Jeffree Star has been saying mad shit about me for the last 2 years and I wasn't aware of it when it was brought to my attention, okay? My feelings were really, really hurt. I tried to give him another chance by having him on my podcast. She would have started up all kind of drama, all right? This time she's not doing that. This time she's staying silent about it, all right? And she's just not posting the video. Or maybe she's holding on to it until she chooses to post it. Because I think that Jeffree Star is now starting to talk a little bit about it. Adam McIntyre mentions this in his video, that if Jeffree starts acting like, well, because he wants the podcast to come out no matter what it says. And Jeffree Star doesn't care. This is the thing that you got to remember about Jeffree Star. Jeffree Star can be proven to be a liar, and he will get in another video and just act like it never happened and not address it or anything. You know, they call Michaela Nogueira the unbothered queen. Jeffree Star was always the OG unbothered queen, okay? He wouldn't address shit unless he was pushed into a corner, and he had to, and it was going to affect his almighty dollar. So if the podcast, he's now coming out and saying it says one thing. If the podcast doesn't say anything like that at all, and he comes out, he can just go, oh, well, she edited, or she did this, or she did that to the podcast, right? But Jeffree starts starting to talk about it a little bit, because if he talks about it, then it's going to force Trisha into a position where she, like, has to release the podcast to prove that what Jeffree is saying isn't true. And I do agree with Adam on that. I do think that there's a possibility that that's what he's trying to do. Jeffree Star is one of the most manipulative people I've ever watched on YouTube. And it's not really, to be honest with you, this is where when I was talking about the OnlyFans thing yesterday, or whatever spicy content he's releasing wherever, that I don't necessarily think it's always about the money to Jeffree Star. Sometimes it's more about the power move to him. Sometimes it's more about, he cares more about being in power and being on top of situations. Being on top of situations, not necessarily. Being in control, being the master manipulator. Sometimes that's more important to him. I've seen that. I witnessed that. Than making money. But it does come down to his money at the end, right? I mean, that's always kind of the angle with him. So I watched this video that Adam McIntyre did. Please go watch it. And the video is about Adam McIntyre. He says in there that he very rarely reaches out to influencers that he talks about, but in this situation, he did reach out to Trisha. I'm just paraphrasing, okay? This is just a small part of the video. And he says in the video that he is not going to say why she's not posting the video, but basically, she's just decided that she's not going. He says, I'm going to leave it up to Trisha to share, but basically she's decided that he confirms that she's not going to post the podcast, okay? So that leaves people to wonder why she's not posting the podcast. I believe, number one, it has to do with the fact that Trisha is very much aligned with Tana Mojo. Why? I'll never know. But she is, okay? And they're friends. And they now have the new podcast and things like that, which I think is a huge FU to Jeffree Star, that she posted the Tana in her podcast. I think that people don't see the little games like this behind the scenes, okay? That Trisha and Tana posted their new Not Love Lines podcast before she posted the Jeffree Star podcast. I think she knew that was going to piss Jeffree off. This is where I've said for years, Trisha's smarter than people give her credit for, okay? She plays dumb and like, oh, whatever. But she's not that stupid, okay? She knows what she's doing. So the fact that she posted that, when I saw that come out and the Jeffree Star podcast hadn't come out, I was like, oh, this is a diss against Jeffree Star, okay? And I think that's why he is starting to talk about it, because I think he knows it's a diss, number one. Number two, I think that she realized what backlash Tana and Brooke Schofield got over the podcast, and she's like, I'm not putting myself in that same situation. It's not worth it. Over having Jeffree Star on my podcast, it's just not. And I think Trisha also thought, because people are going to think that I'm going to post this, they're going to constantly be looking at my podcast, like, when is she posting? When is she posting it? When is she posting it? When is she posting it? So I think that's one of the other reasons, okay? Her even mentioning that she was going to do the podcast and now just leaving it up in the air and not speaking about it is keeping people coming back to her podcast. It's kind of smart, in all honesty, right? Okay. So then I watched Rich Lux's video where it's like this exclusive interview. So he plays the conversation he had with this person, and this woman was in a live stream that Jeffree Star was guesting in, okay? And it wasn't his live stream, and there was no footage in there. It's just this woman that, like, she had seen it. I'm just paraphrasing it. And in the live, so go watch Rich's video about it. In the live stream, she says that they ask him something about the podcast or whatever. And basically what he insinuates is, if I got this right, is that Jeffree said that he's a truth teller. He told the truth. The camera stopped him at the 30-minute mark already. I'm like, oh, I didn't post. And that he told the truth in the Tana Mojo podcast, and he told the truth on the Trisha Paytas podcast, okay? And that when he said something and Trisha said, why do you have to be so honest about it? He said, I always am honest. I always tell the truth. Don't you? Or something like that. And she said, oh, I just say I don't remember. I don't remember. Okay? I'm not necessarily saying that I don't believe she said that. I think 100% she probably said that in the podcast in some capacity. Do I think it was necessarily the way that he's painting it? I'm not sure. He's a guest on the podcast. This is the other thing you have to remember. If she's going to post the podcast, she has to let him know that she's going to post the podcast. So if she has let him know and said, Jeffree, I've decided not to post this podcast, he knows that. He can say whatever he wants to say about the podcast because he knows it's not going up, okay? Every time I've ever been asked to be on a podcast, they've always said to me, like, I will give you, like, last revision, and I will let you know before it goes up and things like that. So she is going to let him know. There's some probably contract signed, okay? I mean, she's a business. So she would let him know if the podcast was going to go up or it wasn't going to go up, okay? So he can say whatever he wants to say about what happened during the podcast because he knows if it's going up or if it's not going up, right? And at this point, we know that it's not going up, allegedly, per her and now per him. So he says in there that basically he's telling all these truths about what happened, and this Rich and this woman, they like speculate that Trisha can't edit that part out without it looking awkward, so she's just not posting the podcast. Well, first of all, okay, I'm not saying that I disagree with that, but if you watch any of Trisha's podcasts, they are highly edited, okay? I've talked about that for months, watching the Trisha's podcasts and covering them over here. They're highly, 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 highly edited. She has a lot of jump cuts in her podcast. So would it be hard for her to edit out a part where Jeffree Star said 30 seconds of, I always tell the truth, why don't you? And she said, oh, I just act like I forget. And first of all, Trisha's admitted that a lot in videos. She said that in other interviews where she's like, oh, I just act like I don't forget. She said things in interviews before that have never been edited out about trolling. Why would this be the one moment that she's so afraid to come out and act like she just forgets stuff that doesn't happen? Trisha's admitted to that before. Why would she need to edit it out of this interview to make Jeffree Star look like he's such a truth teller? I'm not believing that's why she's not posting the thing. Adam says to some degree that what she insinuates is that, or what he knows, but he won't say, is because he's like, that's not my place to say it, is basically that the podcast did not go the way that Trisha had hoped it would, okay? I don't know what that means. I don't know if that means that there wasn't, like afterwards, Jeffree said something about there being a lot of healing, that there was a lot of healing that occurred and things like that. So I'm not really sure why Jeffree Star's takeaway from it was that there was a lot of healing, and Trisha's takeaway from it was it didn't go the way that I wanted. But it reminds me of the Gabby Hanna interview that Trisha Paytas did, where she went on Gabby Hanna's podcast, and at the end of it, Gabby's just going and going, and it's the same typical Gabby that we saw 5 years ago. And Trisha doesn't really know what else to do anymore, so she just kind of like smiles and is like, yeah. She starts agreeing with her. And I've talked about this before. I said in my response to that interview, I was like, you could tell Trisha wanted to get the fuck out of there. She was like, I want this interview over. I am done. This is nonsense. This is bullshit, okay? Trisha messaged me right after I put that video up years ago, and she said, you nailed it. That's exactly how I felt. I couldn't wait to get out of there. So do I think that Jeffree Star could be, streaming a bunch of bullshit, and Trisha's just like, I can't counter him on everything. I was there. I lived it. I know this is bullshit, and he's not going to get honest, and it's going to get ugly. And so finally she just has to smile and be like, okay, and then the podcast's over, and Jeffree's like, oh my God, that was so healing. Because to Jeffree, healing is telling his narrative of the truth, okay? But to Trisha, it wasn't healing because she basically just had to go along with it just to get through the fucking interview. Can I see that being the truth? 100%. Because that was the truth with her and Gabby Hanna back in the day. Go back and watch that interview. Well, I think Gabby's taking it down, but you can go, I'm sure it's uploaded somewhere. You can go back and watch it. Watch it. Trisha is so uncomfortable. And I'm not saying that Trisha was always in the right in situations in the past, like I said before, or even with Gabby Hanna. But in that situation, she just started going along with it because she was like, what's the point? What's the point in bringing this up? So do I think that Trisha got into a situation on the podcast where maybe she did try to challenge him on some things? I mean, Jeffree Star is somebody that talks over people. He will not be told that he is wrong. He takes no accountability for actions when he's interviewed. He always acts to act like he's on top, like I said. And if Trisha's in the middle of this interview and he's doing that, I can see Trisha being like, I'm not saying anything. I'm not getting into this. Okay, well, let's just end this interview and get done with it. And then when it's done, Jeffree's like, ooh, that was so healing to me. Yes, girl, that was so healing to me, okay? Because he got to tell his narrative of the truth. But Trisha didn't. And so it wasn't healing to her. So I don't know, okay? I don't know. But let me know what you think in the comment section below. Do you think the podcast will ever grow up? Why do you think that it was canceled? And whose story do you believe? Let me know in the comment section below. I love you guys, and I will see you tomorrow. Bye.